What happens to these guys if they build it? What happens to this if they build it? What happens to the people who depend on these boats if they build it? What happens to them if they build it? It's back.
To California's water wars now. The idea of building a peripheral canal around the Delta is gaining support.
The channel would divert water from the Sacramento River around the Delta, an idea rejected by voters in 1982. Critics argue any plan to divert water away from the Delta would destroy this already fragile ecosystem.
The problem was in the 1982 election, we didn't put a stake finally through its heart, because this thing keeps arising again like a vampire to come back and want to suck the water out of the Delta.
I think Northern Californians better wake up and fight for their lives to block the Peripheral Canal. The theory, the engineering theory of the Peripheral Canal is that it will take the fresh water coming down the Sacramento River around the problems of the Delta and deliver high-grade water to the pumps at Tracy. The problem is that going to improve the Delta, or is that going to make it worse?
An aggressive campaign is well underway through the governor's office and coordinated with Westland and the Southern California water interests to push through a revised version of the Peripheral Canal. They are calling it the dual conveyance, and the governor is joined by Senator Dianne Feinstein and legislators from both sides of the political aisle. The plan is being promoted to serve the co-equal goals of water supply and ecosystem restoration.
Well, they are protesting a plan to keep the water flowing through the valley. This morning, a group of environmentalists, fishermen, and farmers are staging what they call the Million Boat Flotilla.
There is a rising chorus of opposition by a growing coalition of Delta farmers, recreational and commercial fishermen, Indian tribes, and Delta and coastside communities. They are fighting the battle because the project is deemed to be nothing more than a naked water grab, which is very likely to destroy the Delta's ecosystem and is a financially reckless use of public money.
And good morning. Welcome to the steps of the Twilight Zone. One of the great estuaries in the world is hemorrhaging. Fisheries that God created and nurtured over millennia are being destroyed by greed in mere decades. The public trust is on the scaffold, and water speculators have seized the throne.
The Delta is not a reservoir, it's a living ecosystem, it's an estuary. Estuaries by their very nature require freshwater inflow. It's that fresh water mixing with the salt water that creates these tremendously brackish waters that are so biologically productive. It's necessary for the salmon, for the crab, for the herring, for things such as English sole, striped bass, oysters and shrimp, which were all at one point bountiful in San Francisco Bay, and we wiped them out, in part because of fill, in part because of pollution, but certainly here in the last half century, it's been these levels of water diversions that are basically now taking the lifeblood out of this estuary. It's dying, and with it are its fish and the economies that depend on those fish.
These are complicated issues, and there is no reliably definitive scientific answer as to what a peripheral canal would mean to the Delta, San Francisco Bay, and the creatures that call those ecosystems home. It doesn't take a scientific genius, though, to see that if even more fresh water is prevented from going through the Delta and through the Golden Gate, then multiple species will be seriously threatened, including humans.
The growers are worried because the decision to provide water to save salmon that breed in the Delta and killer whales that feed on them at sea could cut more than 300,000 acre-feet of water out of valley irrigation supplies. The government says that's only about 5% of the federal supply to the valley. Growers say any effort to save fish need to take their concerns into account, and they're going back to court to fight it.
We intend to file another lawsuit similar.
Making all of this even more perplexing is the ever-increasing demand for water to be used on the west side and southern end of the Central Valley, which even agriculture interests agree are problem areas. Problems that took a while to create, but are serious.